Okay, thank you very much for joining us. I am Zoë Lenkiewicz, Senior Technical Advisor and Head of Communications at WasteAid. As part of our preparation for the COP26 United Nations Climate Change Summit in Glasgow, we have invited a range of thought leaders to discuss the role of waste management in climate mitigation. Please do explore the articles at wasteaid.org/COP26. One of the thought pieces within our Waste and Climate Hub is from someone I admire very much, Cordie Aziz, who I'm very pleased to be speaking with today. Cordie founded Environment360 in Ghana in 2014, and since then has become an expert in supporting informal sector plastic waste collectors. Earlier this year, Cordie launched the Circular Innovation Hub in the Greater Ghana region to strengthen the plastic value chain by developing local markets for recycled plastics, while also taking women waste pickers from being collectors to small-scale recyclers. Cordie, great job. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. Zoe, as part of your program, really excited to be here.
Thank you. So first of all, could you talk to us, please, Cordie, about the Circular Innovation Hub, how it works and your impact in creating sustainable livelihoods in recycling?
The Circular Innovation Hub is the first of its kind in Ghana, and what it does is it brings together three key components of the SDGs, which is innovation and partnerships, technology, as well as economic empowerment, particularly for women. And what it really does is it gives us an opportunity to move women waste pickers, as you mentioned, from collectors into recyclers. Environment360 created the first successful community recycling program called Evolve, which mainly focuses in on the collection of PET, or plastic bottles, which is a very low value item. And what we realized over the years is that through working with our women waste pickers, though they've had tremendous success in growing their business from maybe collecting 300 kg into 1 ton, when you look at their financial return, it's still very minimal. The second challenge we realized is that with COVID, we realized that the reliance on international value chains for PET was also not a very smart strategy. As we know, COVID really crippled a lot of markets, plastic being one of those markets that it was crippled. It was hard to export, and then the value of recycled plastic also dropped. So this was another challenge that we faced. Another issue that we've realized with our women through the collection is that we also have a variety of people that just don't find the value in actually the segregation of the hard plastic from the PET, which adds additional cost to the recycler and ensures that PET stays at the very bottom of the value chain. So what the Circular Innovation Hub does is it uses a modular recycling technology that actually comes in from Europe. We're working to localize the technology, but what it does is it allows us to look at the value chain locally and see what can we create locally. Comtrade has noted that Ghana has actually imported $499 million of plastic last year. The EPA has noted 97% of that ended up as waste. So the idea is, how can we reduce the amounts of plastic being imported into Ghana that ends up as waste by using some of the recycled plastic we have here to insert it into the value chain. By doing this, what's going to happen is that we're going to be able to increase the value of the plastic that these women are collecting exponentially. Now, when you look at what it costs for 1 kg of hard plastic or HDPE, typically you're going to get about 2 CDs. Through this project, we can actually raise the price to about 5 CD per kilogram, making it not only desirable to separate this plastic from the PET, giving recyclers an easier time with the PET, but also really impacting these women's income so that they can do more. The Circular Innovation Hub is also really very different because its outreach is exponential. The goal is not for Environment360 to be working with partners all the time and creating its own line of products. The idea is also to empower these women in design so that they can actually go into their communities as well and identify different products that they can make from recycled plastic so that they can actually be independent and be driving forces within their community. So it's not something that's just restricted to what Environment360 has and the partners Environment360 is working with. It's something that the women are intended to build within their own communities and create green jobs as well.
Thanks, Cordie. That all sounds amazing. I mean, the low value of plastic packaging, among other packaging materials, is a real challenge when we're trying to get waste management programs going and empower people to actually recover the true value of that material, and so upcycling it into new products is a really really good approach. Can you give us some examples of what kind of products the women are making?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first partnership locally is with Ghana Bamboo Bikes. So our first class of 7 women are actually working on developing the grip for the handlebar from recycled plastic. Currently, we're also doing a hexagon tile and a square tile, which can be used as coasters as well as design activities. We've started having talks with one European company in particular on how we can partner to actually create a lifestyle product that's fed into the European market. We're making beads from recycled plastic, as now we just had another partnership with the local company Skin Gourmet, in which they'll actually be marketing our recycled bead products in conjunction with their skin products, which also are tied to women's economic empowerment. And then we're making small flower pots. So we're making a lot of things that the market has interest in. We're also making buttons as well. So we're speaking with local fashion designers. Fashion is huge in Ghana. So we're speaking with local fashion designers, particularly those that are into sustainable fashion, on how we can incorporate these products directly into the value chain. And it's really exciting because, once again, you see these women who are mainly single mothers or widows that have no technology background, that have very limited education, and to be able to see them take their plastic that they just collected or segregated, wash it, and then turn it into a final product. I mean, even the pride that they exude, I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to watch these women go through the program and really see themselves in a completely different light. We've had some of the women say they never thought collecting plastic would have brought them to the space where they are now. So we're hoping to make collection of plastic a lot sexier among informal waste pickers and also youth and other people. We want people to know you're just not stuck at the bottom of the value chain. There's actually an opportunity to move up. There is real value in plastic, and you don't have to invest $1 million in machinery.
That your bin man again. Yeah. He's determined to be part of the webinar. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Really, really interesting. And we've done some similar work at WasteAid, but I'm sure there's lots and lots that we can learn from the work that you're doing there in Ghana. So yeah, looking forward to learning more about that over the coming months and years. And really great job. Thank you. So turning then to the theme of the month or the year, COP26. That's coming up. It's just around the corner, starting next week in Glasgow. What do you believe to be the role of the informal sector in closing the loop on waste and reducing greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, so I think the informal sector is critical. I think we all know that recycling, by all means, reduces greenhouse emissions. Not only does it reduce the amount of natural resources that we use, but when we process locally, it's also going to reduce the carbon footprint of really processing that plastic. Informal waste sector has continued to be a dominant topic, I think not only in Ghana, but throughout the world when it comes to how to really create sustainable waste management systems. We know that particularly in Ghana, municipal waste organizations, local municipalities really struggle with how to fund waste. And, the informal sector, this is a job for them. This is something that they're really good at. It's something that with additional support and training, they could really take up, and they can do it at a much lower cost than a municipal assembly can, or even a traditional waste contractor at different times. So I think that when we look at the future of waste, particularly for developing countries. I just don't think the informal sector can really be ignored. I mean, even in developing countries, I mean, where you have Europe, this is the reason there's a whole deposit system, right? You have people that use this deposit as a subsidy to their income. So I think it's been proven that when you put a value on plastic waste, particularly less desirable plastic waste or any type of waste, you will always find a subset of the population willing to support in the collection of that waste, and it makes for a more efficient system. It makes sure that we miss those things that slip through the cracks. It makes sure that we get those people that aren't registered or can't afford regular waste services, as we see here in Ghana. So I don't think that the informal sector can be overlooked. I think that it's going to have to be a central part of any type of policy or waste management system that's created, particularly here on the African continent. I just don't think that we can really ever give enough value to those in the informal sector.
Fabulous. Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, I think if municipalities and governments can create a more enabling environment for the informal sector or private players or self-employed people, however we choose to describe them, then those people will be pulling those materials out of the waste stream, and then there's much less to manage at the end anyway. So it really is a win-win, isn't it, for all the stakeholders concerned?
And this is it. It's a total win, and particularly when you introduce a concept like the Circular Innovation Hub, that not only gives people an opportunity to collect, but really exponentially gives them an income of what they would get comparable to a job. We know one of the issues that we have in Ghana is high youth unemployment. Even recently, there was a speech given by government, and they encourage youth to seek out entrepreneurship. And I think waste is the perfect entrepreneurship opportunity because it does have low startup costs. It doesn't cost anything to go around to your neighbors and ask them to start, organizing a certain sect of their waste for you, or, to start creating partnerships where you're able to harness the value of the waste, and then to be able to take that waste and then to turn it into your own creation. You see your own idea of a product come into fruition and put that into the market. I mean, that's a very powerful tool that if we can get into the hands of a large populace, it has the opportunity to be life-changing and environmentally changing for a lot of communities as well.
Absolutely, that's it. And the more waste that we can get into those value chains, as you said, the less is going to end up being dumped or even burned. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions that way, but also in the production of new materials. If we're replacing the need for those raw materials, then there's additional savings to be had there. I think one thing that keeps coming up with the people that I'm talking with in the lead up to COP is that waste is quite often seen as a vertical industry, but really it's a very horizontal one, isn't it? It's really feeds into so many different sectors.
I 100% agree with you. It feeds into so many things that I think people don't necessarily think about. And I think that one of the things you mentioned and the goal of the Circular Innovation Hub is that now we're mainly working with HDPE and PP and some high density LDPE. But I mean, we really hope to bring in some of the best and the brightest minds and look at electronic waste, textile waste. So, I mean, how can we continue to recreate new things that have value into society and that really fit into communities? Because something else we've realized is that every community is unique. So your community may have a very special need that my community doesn't have. And you as an individual within that community, you're better poised at finding that opportunity than I would be from the outside. So I think that the more you empower the informal sector and other people to look at waste as a real entrepreneurship opportunity, the easier it is to actually address and, like you said, start feeding in to different things. Plastic waste is always the hot issue, but we know that we also have an issue with textile waste in Ghana. We know that e-waste, once again, Ghana has been noted one of the most polluted countries in the world due to Agbogbloshie, the e-waste capital, as they like to call it. So I think that there's so many different avenues that we need to start exploring And all of this comes with empowering of the informal sector. And then, as you mentioned, this is really what's going to start addressing creating those strong local value chains and bringing down those greenhouse gas emissions and making sure that we stay on target with our country determined goals that we have here in Ghana.
Yeah, superb. All right, thanks, Cordie. Thank you. Just to move on then, this discussion wouldn't really be complete without exploring how the informal sector in waste and recycling is contributing to climate resilience. What can you tell us about that?
So once again, I think that this is all about empowering. And I think that when you talk about climate resilience, it's about how can we empower as many people as possible to take part and to fight climate change and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to find more sustainable ways to handle their waste. And this project, particularly the Circular Innovation Hub, as mentioned, is such a great project because it has exponential reach. It's not about what is created in the mind of an E360 individual or, you know, what our engineers create. The ideas out there of things that people can create are limitless. Even now, when we bring people into the hub, one of the most interesting things is everybody has a different way that they would use a product. So it goes to show that our minds function differently depending on our cultural backgrounds, our identities, where we grew up. So how I see a product may not be how you see a product. And the Circular Innovation Hub is really giving it an opportunity to really be able to address this and empower community members to be able to, once again, not only collect more from their communities, but also create income for themselves and other individuals. And I think that that's what resilience is all about. It's about how do you really incorporate as many people as possible. And I really believe that the informal sector, the more that they see the opportunity to make more money and rise up the value chain, the more plastic they will collect. We've been running projects successfully for the past 3 years on different business models. Mainly our work has been financed by GIZ through the German federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia. But we've been able to actually run 3 different economic models on what are the incentives, what does it take to get informal sector to collect more and diversify their materials. And what we found is that more than 90% of our waste pickers actually only do the work part-time. And they do it part-time because essentially it's not a very lucrative job. So now you imagine if you have one person that can collect a ton of plastic part-time over a 4-week period, if you enable that person to make more money, if they see it as a very viable income and they start putting 100% of their energy into it, what is their actual collection capacity? And I think that that could be huge. And I think that if we start giving other opportunities to do things outside of collection, then ultimately the resilience of communities is going to improve. The environmental situation is going to improve. The health situation of these communities is going to improve. And really, I mean, overall, the economic situation of these community members will improve, all off of really harnessing the value of waste.
Absolutely. Okay, people, you heard it here from Cordie herself. You know, now is the time to be creative. There's so many different opportunities, you know, to make whatever you see your community needs. I always think that let's have a look. Let's see if we can make that from a waste stream that is arising in the community. It's a bit like that permaculture approach, isn't it? Of, you know, just seeing how things are flowing and working with that rather than trying to come up against it. And that, you know, it really does hold the key to a lot of climate resilience solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think communities are more than willing to participate in climate mitigation and adaptation measures. I think people definitely see a change. I mean, here in Ghana, we've had torrential rain that's really, I mean, unusual for us at this particular part of the year. We have people that live in seaside villages that are seeing the erosion, that are seeing their landscapes and their properties, you know, water encroaching on it. So I think that many people definitely understand the need for these measures. But I think is how do we empower more people to do more without government interventions, without private interventions? How do I encourage you to be the innovator? How do I encourage you to be the solution creator within your community?
Absolutely. Okay, so interesting seg into our next question then, because up till now we've been focusing very much on that grassroots, first step. How can we get the materials collected and get the most value from them? But looking to COP then, happening next week, what would be your overriding message to government leaders and those working on climate finance at COP?
So I think that this is really going to take a variety of innovative measures. I think one of the challenges we face here, I know in Ghana and probably all of Africa, is that this is a high investment risk. And I think that, if you really want to address climate change, there's going to have to be risk involved. And it's probably going to take a little bit of more gumption. I think that if we want to continue just talking about it, we're definitely going to be washed away, literally. I think that we at some point really have to be more aggressive. We have to be risk takers. We understand not all institutions are risk takers, but hopefully there are going to be some that rise to the front, the early adapters, as they call them, would say, you know what, this is a little bit risky, but we're willing to take this chance and finance this project or work with non-traditional partners. I know one of the challenges are, particularly when you come into the African continent, is lack of data, or maybe not lack of financial records that really show financial sustainability. And I think that there has to be more support to help individuals and smaller organizations to create those documents, to really support it, so that even if they can't make the case, if you yourself as a financial institution believe in it, you can make the case for them. And I think that that's what it's going to take. I also think it's going to take more policy that really pushes locally driven technology solutions. I think at this point, we've done a lot of field trips abroad to see how the Netherlands work, how Germany works, how all of the big name players in Asia are doing recycling. And I think that those are great. I think that they really have opened our eyes to a lot of things. I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of those trips. But I would also be remiss if I didn't recognize that there's a lot of locally driven technical solutions. We were speaking with another gentleman that also produces products from recycled material, and even getting things to our standards authority here, particularly when you're the first and only one, is really difficult. How can policymakers change that? How can they start creating a more enabling environment so that even if they're not sure about something, how can you lower the costs? So that it's not as expensive for people that are creating these technologies and innovations to actually get their foot in the door. And I think that is definitely going to take, once again, a lot more risk taking, a lot more bold action, a little bit less talk at this point, and a lot more partnerships.
Yeah, totally agreed. Thanks, Cordie. And yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big lessons or big messages that we like to convey is that waste management, you can't really deliver that in a cookie cutter approach, saying, oh, this works in the UK or the Netherlands, therefore it's bound to work in Ghana or Kenya, for example, because the economics and the geography and socioeconomics and all of that is so very different that I think the best approach is to support that local innovation, because people can see what's needed and can see what would work locally, and that's all to be celebrated and supported.
Yeah, 100% agree. Waste is definitely not a cookie cutter solution. I mean, even in community to community and within the same country, sometimes the problems we face in Greater Accra are not the same problems faced in the northern region or the Upper West. And we have to recognize that, and we have to recognize maybe not the same infrastructure exists. And that, I mean, there's going to be, as you mentioned, different cultural taboos and other things about waste and how people handle it. And that needs to be respected, and it needs to be incorporated into some of these systems. And this is why, once again, the more individuals you can empower to become their own innovators within communities, the better off we will be. But if you yourself want to be the innovator in every community, I think that this is one of the challenges we are having with addressing waste, is everyone wants to come in and be that pioneer and not only just work in one community, they want to work in every community and do the same thing that they're doing in the first community. And it just doesn't work, and it's not solving the issue. And it's not creating jobs, and it's not moving people up the economic ladder. And these are the things that we really need to be looking at, particularly this year's COP26 is all about climate change, but once again, we know that this really all falls into, or climate mitigation, sorry, but we know that all of these topics fall into the SDGs. And we know that the reason we created the SDGs is because we know that the more of them we achieve, the more utopic our society becomes, the better off it is. And I think that we need to keep that in mind, that when we're looking at waste, as you mentioned, it can't just be something for one portion or one thing fits all. And, you know, my technology is going to be patented and innovated, and I'm going to be the only one that does it, you know?
The king of plastic recycling.
This is it. There's enough room for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So we've at WasteAid, and we're just we've been running a project called the Circular Economy Network, and that's been across 3 cities. So Johannesburg in South Africa, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and Guwahati in Northeast India. And we ran a Zero Waste Cities competition to invite these grassroots innovations and entrepreneurs to put forward their proposals. And then we've gone through the challenge like a Dragon's Den type approach. And just last week we announced the 6 winners, and the solutions are they're just fantastic, and they're also unique to their specific city and the challenges faced there. So, for example, in Guwahati, the main dump site is on the edge of a lake, and the lake is home to many endangered species and so on. But the lake is also polluted by water hyacinth. And there is a small company called Inside Out that they're harvesting the water hyacinth and turning it into paperboard products.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and this kind of innovation, there's no way that it could have been developed anywhere else.
They live in the community.
That's right. And so they're able to then get that, what is a pollution problem into a value chain and create jobs again for the informal sector. So, that was just one. There were 6 winners in total, and I'd encourage people to pay a visit to the website and have a look at them, because they're really interesting. And it just, absolutely supports your point that these recycling innovations are best when they come from the local community to serve them.
Definitely. And I think even when you look at scale, once again, one of the major barriers to scale is always going to be finance, particularly in this part of the world. I mean, and not only in waste management, in all businesses. So I think that you also have to look at, when you're creating business models and other things, understanding that there might be a limitation to what your impact can be. And once again, that doesn't mean that you can't be innovative and work with different partners and different communities. But I think that we also need to understand, as you mentioned, that what works, your water hyacinth idea, it can't necessarily work just in every community. So when you talk about your plan to scale, like, you can't say that you're going to scale to 30 communities. And we know this is what funders and this is what donors and other people love to hear, but sometimes it's just not feasible. And I think that we need to really take more of a feasible approach when it comes to waste management. And sometimes I think we are really rose-colored glasses about it. That, okay, there's this great idea, they're doing well in Kenya, or they're doing well in Sierra Leone or Benin. I'm very sure that it can do well, in Ghana or Togo. And that's just not always the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the temptation in the world of finance is to find one solution that fits everyone, like you're saying. But waste management really calls for a plurality of approach, and getting those diverse voices and diverse ideas and diverse solutions, and bit by bit, it will, I think, to improve sustainable waste management as part of delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. So taking people, involving people, putting people at the heart of it, because I think, there's not the circular economy. If it's just for the environment at the sake of people, then what's the point? It needs to be part of that whole sustainable development mission. Then we'll be able to make more progress, and it'll be much more interesting as well.
That's it. And I think financiers also have to realize that when they're looking at financing a project, perhaps instead of focusing so much in on scale, maybe you need to actually focus in on continued innovations of that product that can really lead to diversified value chains within the same community. One of the things I know that's really important with us about the Circular Innovation Hub, once again, is not just about being where you are today, but yes, we have this machine that we've bought in from Europe. Now we're looking at, okay, what parts can we really localize really quickly, and what parts will we have to import from Europe? And then hopefully somebody will say, okay, you know what, this heating component we have to import from Europe now, but how can we now empower local engineers to make this heating component so that it's the same grade as it is that you would find in Europe? How can we make this, pressure mechanism or extruder the same level of exactness, or how can we get these molds? So I think that you also have to look at how you create innovation within one particular product so that it creates additional value chains versus always looking at scaling as from country to country to country, because many things can be used in many different ways. And this is the great thing, is we were saying about waste earlier, right? Is that it's really horizontal and it's not very vertical. So you can actually create varied chains for the same product when you're investing more in innovation and partnerships, more so than scale sometimes. So I would also really encourage financiers to not necessarily look at how easily this can be replicated, but how innovative is it? Or what are the other potential value chains that can be created from this? And how can you maybe monopolize those value chains across the way versus monopolizing the scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So there we are. COP26 is about supporting innovation to deliver climate action rather than one specific product or process.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
Well, thank you very much once again, Cordie. And we really value your contribution to raising the profile of waste management and recycling globally and building sustainable livelihoods in waste management and recycling. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So WasteAid welcomes diverse viewpoints to tackle the global waste crisis and its impact on climate change. We have a hub at wasteaid.org/COP26 where these views are shared, and are planning to keep the momentum through to COP27, which will take place in Africa next year. Thank you, Cordie, once again for joining us, and we wish you all the very best with your brilliant work at Environment360 and the Circular Innovation Hub.